Canada, where the fight for freedom is still being crushed by the authoritarian government. And breaking tonight, the police in Ottawa have arrested one of the main key organizers of the Freedom Convoy, while Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau keeps blasting the protesters as racist and extremists. Yesterday, he upped the smears by accusing a Jewish conservative lawmaker of supporting swastikas. Her family survived the Holocaust. Watch.
Mr. Speaker, when did the Prime Minister lose his way? When did it happen?
Mr. Speaker, Conservative Party members can stand with people who wave swastikas. They can stand with people who wave the Confederate flag. We will choose to stand with Canadians who deserve to be able to get to their jobs, who be able to get their lives back.
Okay, your hair now makes me barf. The Canadian truckers want their lives back, too. That's the whole point of the protest. Meanwhile, the Liberal media coverage of the Freedom Convoy taking a very dangerous turn. The Washington Post, Reuters, and other publications, they have printed the names of donors to the trucker protest after their identities were exposed by hackers and a data breach of Give, Send, Go. Now the donors say they're getting harassed, threatened, even fired from their jobs. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar came to their defense, and she was talking about defending all of the people who've donated, tweeting, quote, "I failed to see why any journalist felt the need to report on a shop owner making such an insignificant donation rather than to get them harassed. It's unconscionable and journalists need to do better," end quote. And she's right here. No one should be smeared for supporting a cause, no matter where they stand politically. And you know what, here, you may not know where a donor stands. So will the media and Trudeau win this fight, or will the Canadian truckers keep on trucking? Let's get into it with tonight's Man Panel from The Federalist, where he serves as senior editor. It is Chris Bedford. We've got the host of The Richard Fowler Show. He's a Fox News contributor. He is Richard Fowler. And, oh, looky here, hallelujah, the host of the Part of the Problem podcast, the one and only Dave Smith. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Chris, I will start with you.
No, good to see you, Kennedy.
Well, welcome to you as well. Thank you, Richard. So let's start with Justin Trudeau telling Jewish conservative lawmakers that they're supporting swastikas. That's a bit too far.
I think it's worth signing up to Ben Dominic's newsletter, The Transom, just to get the words he's used to describe Trudeau every day. This morning was Prime Minister Cinnamon Latte. To see him out there and just really smearing these folks who are literally just trying to work. Like, I think we've lost track, or it's simply not been reported intentionally, what these folks are trying to protest for, which is whether or not they have to submit to these absurd mandates from the Canadian government in order to earn a living, in order to be able to feed their families, in order to have a job. These people are being pushed out, and Justin Trudeau has said, you know, they don't even have, they're not allowed to be here, that their opinions are not allowed to be in the public square. I understand that they're causing a lockdown. They are disrupting economic life in that city. They're doing it because the economic life of the entire country is being disrupted. They're making an important point. And when Trudeau just wants to dismiss, he doesn't even try to understand where they're coming from. And to do that, I can understand disagreeing with a protest, and I've disagreed with plenty of protests living in D.C. in my life, but to not even try to understand where they're coming from and just write them off as Nazis when that's completely absurd, I think that that's failing him, and we might be seeing the end of the Trudeau government.
Yeah, and, you know, there are a lot of people who feel very strongly about the vaccine. There are people who don't want to be forced to take the vaccine, and maybe some of those people have already been sick, or maybe some of them sit in the cab of a truck for hours and days by themselves at a time and don't want to be told what to do. To Chris's point, Richard, the Prime Minister easily could have sat down and said, all right, what is it going to take? Obviously, we have to keep these trucking lanes open so we can have a free flow of international commerce. He did not do that. He made the situation worse and worse and worse by turning Ottawa into an actual police state. I mean, there are officers everywhere. They're arresting people, freezing bank accounts, publishing names so people will lose their licenses and get fired, so now they won't have a livelihood at all. And it's very curious that Ilhan Omar is, you know, one of the few rational, outspoken people who's defending donors to Give, Send, Go. Does that make you mad?
Well, look, I think there's a couple things. I think there's a couple things here. I think thing one is, yes, we always want people to come to the table and figure out how we find some common ground here. I think the second thing here is what we know from the reporting in Canada and from various news sources. 80% of truckers in Canada are vaccinated. The 20% that aren't, many of them are out there protesting, and they have the right to do that, right? This is what it's all about. This is what democracy is about, expressing your discontent against the government. And I think why we have to get to a speedy recovery or a speedy resolution on this is because of this. We know that the lines that they are holding, the sort of protest lines, are interrupting the flow of trade, both between Canada and the United States, as well as between Canada and Mexico. And it's really disrupting all North American trade, especially in the car manufacturing industry.
So if they said, okay, we're going to back off on the mask or on the vaccine mandates, if they said that, the truckers would go, great, let's start moving. Why not do that?
Well, I mean, we hope that's the case, right? I think what's happened for the trucker protests, unfortunately, is that their message has become muddy.
I think their message has been pretty consistent all along. So, Dave, tell me what's really going on here structurally, because you've got a group of working class people that is now on the wrong side of left-wing government. So what is happening?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that it's hard to like focus on exactly what's happening, especially over the last couple of years when there's just been so much going on. But objectively, this is no laughing matter. What's happening here is that there was a working class mass protest that is being squashed by an authoritarian government that has just invoked unprecedented emergency powers. That is a fact. Yeah. That's not an opinion. That is what's going on here. And of course, they are largely, the corporate press is largely on the side of the authoritarian government that is doing it. They've also invoked these financial powers to steal property in the form of money from the people who protested with no due process. None, like, forget the thousands of years of British common law, forget any type of no, they will seize your money, and then I suppose it's on you to go prove that you weren't in fact blocking a road, or whether you were in the protest at all. Yeah. The idea that anyone would not be terrified that that a government would invoke this power is, I mean, talk about learning no lessons from history. And, to think about how many times, like, Donald Trump was compared to Adolf Hitler, yet you see this happening right in front of you. I mean, this is real. This is not a game. And the idea that anybody, look, I've said this before on your show, and I'm just going to say this one more time. I know the word is overused. Anyone who supports this is a fascist. You are a fascist if you support this. And I'm not using this in the popular way that progressives like to use it for anyone they disagree with. I mean, literally, by definition. Yeah. That's what we're dealing with here. These are scary times.
Yeah, this is what fascism looks like. It flies in on gilded wings with very soft, manageable hair.